Welcome to Totally Technical. I'm your host, Totally Technical Todd, and this is our maiden voyage of our Totally Technical podcast where I talk to top talent in the tech community. And today I have a very talented tech titan for our very first episode, Darie Dorlus, one of the best people that I know in tech and just in general. First and foremost, Darie is a dad to a duo of delightful divas. He's a husband to a happy and healthy heroine. He's the CEO and founder of Synchronized Technology, or SyncTech, which helps your company leverage AI and best use AI and help totally transform your company. He's also founded several startups like Darie, which is helping to reduce carbon emissions and help with climate change, as well as many others. And if that doesn't sound like enough, oh, by the way, he also has his full-time gig, his main job, which is being one of the top technical talent at Gusto. If you're not familiar with Gusto, it's an HR and payroll platform that is a decacorn out of Silicon Valley. They're getting ready to IPO. And with Darie running, transforming the technology over there, I'm definitely planning to invest as soon as they IPO. So Darie, you are the busiest person I know by far. Honestly, your time management skill is incredible. And somehow you do it with this big old smile. You're the happiest person I know. And you look 10 years younger than you are. Tell us a little bit about you and how the heck do you do this, man? You're amazing.
Oh man, thank you. Thank you so much. From now on, I want you to introduce me wherever I go. So I'm just gonna hire you as my right person.
Gotcha.
This is very good, very humbling. First of all, it's an honor to be here, to be the first guest of Totally Technical Todd, the podcast. I am excited about that. How do I do it? That's a very good question. I've been in tech, as you know, for internal inflection for 17, 20 years. Seems like however long I can remember. I've always done something of whether it's entrepreneurship or building tech stack. I think over time, sort of like getting used to some sort of rhythm, right? I'm like, oh, sure, I can always do the 9 to 5 thing, but then that was never enough. Then I would go and do the entrepreneurship thing that went successful. I'm like, okay, we need money, more stability. And then family came around, right? It's like, it's a balancing act. And my view, so my philosophy on life in general is we optimize for happiness. And I don't believe that having a family only in the end, a great family, that to me would have been a failure, or only a business, right? So it's an understanding of give and take, what it is that has to give at some point, or how do you prioritize all of it, right? And finding the right people around you that can help you. I'm not doing all this alone. There are people that I can count on. I've been building a list of top people for 20 years. And I always told them, I'll call you at some point in my career and tell you something like this. How much money are you making? Well, I can probably make you a better offer if you come and build the future with me. And I've cashed in on some of these calls, and I continue to do this, right?
When it comes to the family, I know some of those people too that you've done that for.
It's amazing. Yeah, exactly. And the last piece is the family. You need a great partner that understands that there's a goal that we're trying to accomplish, and we'll do what it takes, right? And allow the kids to come in here as I'm doing this podcast and say, hey, Daddy, I need the cat has a flea. This happens all the time. And it's a lot of harmony. That's what I call it.
I think that actually literally happened to you, right? They came in with a flea problem, right?
They did. I was at the meeting with VPs, and they're like, "We have a flea situation. The team can take care of the rest. You need to be able to do that, and that's what makes it all work."
Yeah, having a good team is critical. So tell me, let's jump into AI, because so many of the people that run in our circles, they're all turning to AI, using AI. But when you and I last spoke, you were telling me about how you're leveraging AI both at Gusto and at SyncTech, and how you're using it to help your clients and your teams. So talk to me a little bit about that. Talk to us about what you're doing and how you're transforming your tech teams and companies using AI.
So AI is a new gold, and data is a new gold, right? And there's this data rush. This is a new gold rush. And a lot of people are just like trying to make sense of it. Now, on the one side, on the other side, it's not new. Amazon and Google and Apple, they've been making money with a bunch of data for a long time. It's like
and AI. And they've been using AI.
And they've been using AI. ChatGPT with OpenAI is like put in the forefront. People are like, oh my God, this thing is now at the forefront of people's sort of psyche. I see AI more as a shovel, right? It's like, how do you get the gold out? It's a tool to get things out. Now, if you have garbage data or garbage train data, you're probably going to get garbage out. OpenAI with the big LLMs make it so much easier now to sort of tap into the whole thing, right? So then what do you do? It's like, how do you empower people to use those tools to get better use out of it? There's two ways that you look at it. One of them is the product side. There's a bunch of products. I think a lot of us are used to chat. Like you always, if you think of AI, you think of a chatbot. That's one application, right? It could be an agent that's doing so much in the background that you even know that you're using AI for. That makes your life easier, right? We all devs, we want productivity, we want to go faster. There's tools that we can create or tools that we can use to help us go faster, right? Like Cursor is one of them. The Kojo, the PR merger is one of them. There are things that can help us get better, and depending on your seniority too, right? So I feel like at some point in seniority, once you start getting to the staff and senior staff level, the value you get from those things can diminish depending on how specialized of the thing that you're doing. Right? So how do we do it? How do we make it work? Exactly that. The first thing that we do is, how do you create the space for people to experiment and experiment fast and do things? How do you even inspire people to go experiment? Because what you would see happen, a lot of engineers don't even want to go there. And part of it is, I use this analogy all the time. If you use a library that's like AngularJS, forever, it's just like, oh my God, this thing, and the Angular 2 Plus came out. It's a much better architecture. But if you had your opinion about Angular, it's really hard to change it now to use Angular 2 9 years or 8 years later.
Yeah, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
Any AI tool, any LLM, they just keep like order of magnitude. 6 months later, the thing that you couldn't do that was really bad, that it's the best at, can be better than you.
You're unrecognizable.
Yeah, exactly. So people need to get in that mindset. I'm finding a lot of engineers, and I'm talking like the engineers at the highest level. They're like, oh no, this thing doesn't work. I'm like, when's the last time you tried this? A year ago. I'm like, okay, try it again. So yeah, I think your question had multiple aspects of it. And at SyncTech, so here's what I found. And I go around to quite a few conferences. What I realize is nobody knows what's going on. Nobody has the answer. Everybody's trying to figure it out. And everybody looks like they have things together. And I don't have the answer. But I think I'm in a position that, being in tech that long, that I know enough that I can probably form more informed decisions or thoughts than most in the industry. So I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out along with everybody else. If you think of the .NET, sort of the .com bubble, I'm like, okay, Amazon came out of this. Chewy came out of this. There's some company that actually figured it out. And I'm like, so how do we put ourselves on a path that we flex the muscle, right? We actually get to use some of these tools and understand how to use them, and also help other people figure it out, right? At the August to September of last year, over 10,000 AI tools got created. How do you even navigate that? If you're a small business, yeah, you can become a one-person power shop, but you need to know what are some of the good tools that you can do. And that's what me and my team try to do.
It's hard to keep up with them. It's hard to keep up with all these tools.
It can be very daunting. So we would try a bunch of them and form an opinion on some of them, and then like, okay, have you considered this? And sort of like do implementation for people.
So for you at Gusto in particular, which do you think is more important, or which are you spending more of your time focusing on? Building, like leveraging AI for your customers, or leveraging AI for your team?
You have to do both. Right? There is, I don't know how much I can say here, Gusto wise, but what I can say is Gusto has some customer facing AI services, right? That is good, and that is ever growing. That's the thing. It just keeps getting better. As the LLM gets better, everything gets better. And also things that has to help the team members, as we help things that help us get better. I think there are some instances where we create internal tools that can accelerate things like almost 5-10 times to give people information. And there is the thing that we build to help developers on one side. And the last thing is, how do you get engineers to be interested in building the things that can help people? Until you figure out that piece.
To help themselves.
Exactly. Until you figure out how to sort of empower and activate them, you're probably still going to be, you won't be operating at your full potential.
Love it. So can you disclose some of what you guys are doing either at Gusto or SyncTech to really optimize like individuals and the team internally?
Oh yeah. Well, like I mentioned some of it earlier.
I mean, you've told I'm trying to fish it out of you now, you know.
Oh yeah. I believe so. Let's talk about things that not just Gusto or SyncTech, but things that can be useful. If you think,
I think that's more useful. Like, what can I apply in my job? What can another founder, another tech leader utilize? Yeah, let's talk there.
and it applies to all both Gusto and SyncTech too. So if you think about, let's talk about collaboration. How does application get developed today? One of the first things you see, a product person, a PM, write some specs, gets it to the designer. At some point, the designer gets involved, start building some screens. At some point, engineers get involved to give some opinions, and the engineer gives opinion to the designer that ultimately gives them the design. They have to go in isolation, build the thing, come back with it, and we go test it. This is good. This has worked for decades. Now, think about the amount of information that everybody's missing. We're saying that the gold rush is data. So we have a bunch of data. We have the application. We've had years or decades of building pages and other things in the system, right? So why couldn't we tap into all this? We already have, any big company has a design system. So why are we going back to the drawing board? Right. What if we had there's this thing that code Gen AI, you can generate code, right? What if we had that? You've heard of V0, you've heard of Replit, those things that can give it a picture and it can build the entire page for you. What if you
Bolt also does it, yeah.
Bolt that I love Bolt, right?
I've used V0, I've used Bolt, I've used Replit. They're all fantastic for, depending on what you're doing.
Depending on what you're doing. Actually, Bolt built the new version of SyncTech site, right? Completely with prompting. We can talk about that later. So how do you build tools? Now, the idea is, how do you build tools that bring that collaboration to the forefront? So the designer can be like, oh, I'm trying to create a new page, and I just prompt that, and then boom, it gets created. The PM says that. Now, the designer just comes in and be like, oh, how can we sort of change some of the things here and there? And the engineers, this V0 app, like application already has context into the code. So now the next frontier is to bring that to the IDE, right? And the engineers have this like right away, so that you no longer have to think about, oh, I have to put boxes together. It's more on, how do I solve the harder problems, right? This is a direction that, forget Gusto, that Gusto is definitely considering. SyncTech is advising some bigger tech team, but the Google and the Metas. I mean, I was at Afrotech last November. And those are the things that we're talking about. How do we like accelerate? That's on the DevX side, not just on the developer productivity. Right? How do we accelerate the collaboration in EPD, in building product, engineering, and design, and also accelerate developer productivity? So those are some of the things that are happening right now. And that's what I believe is great. It's some of the great that comes out of using that tool correctly.
And what kind of productivity advancements are you getting? Is it 5x? Is it 10x?
Oh, that's a very good question. But that remains to be seen. This is still nascent. This is still early. The idea is that at critical mass, then you get a lot of productivity. The thing I'm seeing in many companies is developers on that, you don't have like a fully bought-in development force. It's like where everybody is like, okay, let's hop in on those tools, right?
They're used to doing things a certain way. Right. And it's just easy. Like you show up at your job, you do this, you get into a pattern, and you're asking them, hey, stop, change your pattern. There's better ways of doing this now. Yeah. And I think that's really where I'm fascinated, is like, you're really taking your team and shaking them up and forcing them to utilize the tools and be more productive. It's really incredible.
And I can give you some example there. On one side, where I'm seeing the most excitement is both on the client front and on sort of product, non-engineering front, where people now can use things like, I don't know SQL, but I can prompt and I get the SQL. I can like prompt the system now. That's incredible, right? Imagine a non-technical PM and all that. Those are like, people are like, oh my God, this is so cool. Engineers like, oh, I don't know. It doesn't give you a right answer. I'm like, even if it did it once or twice or 10% of the time, but imagine what you do now for a whole team that has 20 PMs that now can talk to that doesn't need SQL knowledge to talk to your data, right? There's on that aspect. On the other, something at a profound sort of moment that changed how SyncTech does development. Now, we are very picky about who we let on, who we take on as a customer. We go for most companies that are well-funded, right? Startup that more money is not really an issue. And I had a client that post-lunch, we like in a support mode, ask us to build an entirely new feature. And naturally, I'm like, we're launching now. We launch. We're not building anything new. And then I thought about it for a second. Took the email the client sent. I dropped in the cursor, tool cursor with few files. I'm like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do it. And I kid you not, Todd, within seconds, page started showing up. I'm like, no way. And then the button showed up. I'm like, what? I'm like, that's a joke, right? This button doesn't work. And I clicked on it, exported. I was like, holy shit, what just happened? And I took a video of the whole thing. I took a video of the whole thing. I said to the client, I'm like, is that what you're talking about? Like, we're talking about like within minutes of this whole thing happening. He's like, yes, exactly. I'm like,
So
well,
how do you charge clients for that? Because, I used to charge, when I first started an agency years ago, I would charge more based on hours and estimated hours. Then I started realizing like there's value in what you're building, regardless of how long it takes. And building something faster doesn't make it have less value, right? So what you just built in this example, what you built for the customer has the same value as if you spent weeks scoping it out and designing it and building it and testing it. It doesn't matter that you did it in 30 seconds or whatever. It still has the same value. So how are you charging clients, or do you have a new model for that?
we had to. That moment made me realize that I can no longer charge per hour, right? So we moved to a point-based system where we charge per complexity. How complex something is, we assign a certain point. Now we have a dollar amount assigned to each point, and that's what we charge the client. As things change, like let's no longer do project-based, let's do feature-based. We reduce the scope, just features, and we break things down so that we'll deliver this thing, and that's what it costs. What does add though?
I moved to charging like that a couple of years ago as well, because it's easier for the clients. When you do things project based, the client usually wins. When you do things hour based, the client's usually unhappy. And this is more like meeting in the middle, I think, too. So I think it's good for the client. I think it's good for the agency as well.
Yeah, it has worked. It has been working pretty well. We're still like, some clients where we're still doing hourly. There are some where we're continue piloting the point-based system. And of course, with estimation, it's always a shot in the dark.
You're always wrong when you estimate. You're always wrong. You just hope that the over and the under balance, right?
Yeah. You never know what you're going to win.
Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about that developer experience, right? And using AI as a developer, using AI as a tech leader. Let's shift the focus for a minute and start talking about the consumer side, right? So, you gave this example of, a client saying, hey, I want this new feature, and you used AI to build that feature. What I've been wondering about and really, really spending a lot of my time thinking about is not like, how can I put AI into my platform that I'm building? But it's, how are we as humans going to be interacting with AI? I don't think it's just going to be like a simple chatbot. How are we going to be interacting with AI 2 years from now? I don't even think we can look 5 years, 10 years. I think that's so far in the future right now, the way things are changing. But if you had a proverbial crystal ball and could look ahead 2 years, how do you think that consumers are going to be using AI differently, interacting with it differently? And how can we start building for that? Right? Because if we know what that is, we can be ahead of the curve if that's what we're building for.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I spent some time thinking about that. So, well, I'll tell you, yeah, if you look any 5 years, 10 years, you're taking shots in the dark. What I would tell you, using one thing I find to be natural, at least for me, have you been using ChatGPT voice and video?
Constantly. The voice a lot, not as much video, I have to admit, although I have some applications for it I've thought of. I just haven't gotten around to them, but the voice I use regularly.
Yes. Okay. So voice. So I find myself in cars just talking to ChatGPT, designing systems, and then it comes up with good answers. I use now as a note-taking tool. I'm like, hey, I meet with a client. Here was the mind-up mixings of it, right? And it's like, okay, let me structure your thought. Is that what I'm hearing? I'm like, good. I wish I could do this myself, because I do a lot of stream of consciousness, but then that's on my phone. The interaction there is clunky. It's on my phone. I have to go into ChatGPT. I wish Siri could do things like this, or Alexa.
Yeah.
Like, imagine working in a hole where it's interconnected like this, and I'm not having this weird interaction where I'm shouting at Alexa all the time. It felt as seamless as it does with these. So imagine for a second that you add those things on Meta's glasses, the Ray-Ban glasses, right? So now you're walking around with this concept person that can see things. Dude, let's take this even further. I'm building a car for my kid, and I'm stuck. Naturally, I'll just go on YouTube, try the video, try to go to the video and see the right part. I just take my phone, go on OpenAI. I'm like, hey, I'm building this. Here's where I am. What should I do? And tell me, oh, you just X, Y, Z. I'm like, What? My wife is putting together a cat tower. She gets stuck. I'm like, hey, here's what she's doing. Here's the product. What should we do here? It's like, oh, this is the next thing you need to be looking for. You don't understand what just happened. So how do I heat? I think that's underutilized, right? Someone told me the other day, I heard there's a thing called OpenAI where you can talk to it and it gives you answers. She was not in tech. The person was not in tech and they were not in tech. And I was like, and everybody's sitting around or somewhat techie. And the lady we're talking to is so amazed, our age, like younger generation than we were, about this new thing that's coming that can change the world. I'm like, we're using this thing every day, right? It's not like,
Right.
It's not coming, it's here.
It's not coming, it's here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with your vision. So I'm going to give you a hot take and then ask you your opinion on it. So I'm with your vision. I think, wearables like glasses with vision, like the Meta glasses with Ray-Ban, having something integrated, but more deeply integrated. So the fluidity that I can talk to ChatGPT and the
Exactly that.
seeming intelligence, right? I mean, you and I know from a technical standpoint, it's not really like AGI yet. It's not general intelligence, but man, it sure seems like it when you're having a conversation with it. The way it feels like it understands you in terms of understanding English and not converting it to tokens and the things that are actually happening, but it just feels real. And then having the glasses and that interaction and that readiness it's more like Jarvis, right? But most people would argue that Apple is like way behind on the AI curve. And if you look at Apple Intelligence, it's not nearly as good as what we're seeing from a lot of other companies. But here's my take that I want you to comment on or get your opinion. I think what Apple is setting themselves up for, right? I think we're at the very early stages of it, or nascent, as you said. We're at the early stages. What they're trying to do is ingrain Apple Intelligence through the entire system, through all of iOS, through your entire, Apple ecosystem. It might not work as great as as we might expect from AI today, but I think that ingrainedness, if that's a word, of it is the future. So imagine a system where you have your wearables, you have it fully built into your operating system of your personal devices, and it has that fluidity of like ChatGPT voice. I think that to me would be that Jarvis moment, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Years ago, maybe a decade ago, my pipe dream was to create a sort of like AI forward OS.
Iron Man suit. You're gonna build an Iron Man suit. I got it.
No, more like, yeah, I wish, right? I was telling niggas, like, I need an OS that can like understand what I say, talk to me. That Siri thing is sort of like primitive. And you're right. Sort of where I was going. The Apple Intelligence now using ChatGPT in the backend, right? You can even connect your Pro account. It's like, okay, should I ask ChatGPT for some of these things? The interaction was jarring, right? It's just like if you have all those things that are connected and you can use them seamlessly, right? Then, and Apple is positioned well. Apple's the last mover always. It's positioned extremely well with this massive
Adoption.
following. Adoption. Yeah. Once Apple releases it, then it becomes a norm, right? And Apple takes its time to get there. I wish that Steve Jobs was around and they could be at the forefront of making some of these things happen. But I digress. Right? That's a whole different conversation. And you're gonna start seeing some of these things sort of take shape. And that's what I'm saying. So when you look at, and I'm sure we're gonna get there, when you look at DeepSeek using Llama's sort of like model to train theirs, being that's a good word here, being informed by ChatGPT, right? And you start seeing. So I want those things. Right, let me take a step back. One of the things that gave me pause, what I thought that the AI thing is going to become problematic, it's expensive. It used to be very expensive to make any of those calls if you're a developer, if you're using any of the LLMs and the infrastructure around them, you're paying a lot of money. Like 1,000 calls to you $1. I'm like, anything you do at scale here, you're just paying OpenAI, right? But now, if we can bring that cost down, and it becomes less of an issue, that's why I was like, if you think of security, there's always that concern. Especially think of something like Gusto, who's in the HIPAA, the PII, private protected health information,
HR and payroll, like and you got to protect that information.
Exactly. And then you put the price on top of that, and then your information is exposed, and it's like it's a cluster of something bad waiting to happen, right? So having system now that I was always thinking, until we can figure out a way to make this thing sort of like hybrid, just like how we do on premise, off premise, and we could still work and still scale pretty well, we're probably gonna have a big problem there to have very wide adoption. And then you have the whole AI is overly hyped. Every part of AI is overly hyped right now, right? And you're getting to a point where people are sort of coming to expectation that it can't do everything. It's not AGI, it's not ASI, right? Let's make sure we find the right application. Like sort of coming down to what actually reflects reality. And I love that now DeepSeek is like, oh, I can do it cheaper and better.
Yeah.
We're sort of like, good. So what does that mean in some of the questions that you ask? So now how do we get all these things now? If price is coming down, if it's easier to run them, to compute, then how more people like myself, any entrepreneur can like, oh, how do I integrate those things together? How do I create more devices that now can have natural conversations? I can see things naturally. Easy devices. And I think if you can integrate all those, you'll definitely start winning. And Apple will be like, okay, I'm going to eat everybody's lunch because my system is closed. All right. They have a closed system, so they can just hop on that.
So, okay, you broke the seal, right? DeepSeek. What do you think it's going to be the impact both today, like what we're seeing in the markets, and then also just long-term, the impacts on AI in the US, AI globally, and so forth?
Yeah.
Is this just like a new era and just like the next step in evolution of AI?
Oh my God. So many good things. First of all, whatever I say here reflects my opinion, not Gusto, not Todd's. I feel like we're getting political. We did get our lunch eaten, right? And the irony in my circles that we're talking about is like, it's funny how OpenAI is saying how DeepSeek copied their data or used their data when I guess they didn't.
Where did they get their data from?
Exactly. This is like their affirmation, right? Just got everybody's data. I'm like, the irony. Kama really is a female dog. Like things come full circle. So this is pretty funny. I love the fact that, so let's think about what's happening geopolitically. We're spending years and years limiting China's ability to get access to microchip so that they don't surpass us, right? Fine, it's global, there's competition, I understand. And then
the chips that they build for us,
the chips that all those chips, right? And here's where it's interesting. Necessity is at the root of what I mentioned. Like you put them in a corner, right? So they get creative. Like human nature, you can never put them in a box, right? And they end up doing something that as good as your top of the line, your state of the art. And on top of that, it costs a fraction of the cost. So it's of course the market change sentiment. Everything goes down. People's like, is that the end? Like, what do we do? Of course, that's competition. That's business. Like, I'm sure Sam Altman and Darie Dorlus, whatever the guy from Entropic is. Now they're getting back to how do we hit back? I haven't confirmed the source, but I even heard Sam saying, sure, we're gonna adopt some of the way that enhanced reinforcement that both Meta is doing and DeepSeek is doing. But what this means is price goes down. If it's true that
it's good for all, because they all had monopolies on this, and now go figure. The Chinese figure out a way to do it cheaper, and now it's now they can't have these high prices on us, and now I think it's going to just become more widely available and more widely adopted.
Yes, yeah. And whether you're a fan of China or not, and audience, I'm a fan of good technology and it being available and being distributed to everybody, being sort of like reachable. That makes that possible, right? If you are in a
democratization of AI.
Yes.
Okay, so you said that all AI right now, all AI technology is hype right now. So, okay, I'm not going to argue with you on that because I don't disagree with you. But is there anything either out today or coming out that you're genuinely excited about that you don't think is over?
There's a big hype going around because the thing is new. Every team, company I've talked to they believe that they have an AI strategy, but all of it is like we're shaping it. It's like this proverbial, you look at this person walking the white, nice trench coat, like, oh my God, this guy seems well put together. And when you open the trench coat, 3 little kids on top of each other. That's what's going on right now. Someone said it best at one of these conferences I was at. There's a bunch of, when it comes to AI, there's a bunch of people. There's some that are building trains, there's some that are building railroads, right? Nobody's confirming whether those trains would fit on the railroads, but people are building tracks, people are building trains. Like people are just building. At some point, we're going to try to figure it out, right? So it's kind of wild out there right now. And maybe that's good. Maybe you don't want to over sort of standardize things because we don't know. We don't know yet. What I think is underutilized. So this is what the hack's coming from. Everybody's like in a frenzy trying to get to use it. And there is actual good use cases. I think, you have some of the leaders like Claude and Traffic, OpenAI. You have Glean. There are some people that are doing some things that I think are pretty cool. Then you have agentic anything. You have the advent of agent. I think it's overly underutilized.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what we're saying here. An agent is a thing that can use an LLM. I think a lot of the definitions I've seen is it's all conversational. Like, it doesn't have to be. It can use an MLM to do some reasoning, but has some sort of orchestration factor that can call some tools that can be APIs. Can you just tell it how you do the thing? And we're talking about RAG 2 here, right? How you retrieve, you can augment. An LLM is the smartest dumb thing ever.
I love that. But yes, please explain.
The LLM is only as good as the information that was put into it, the data it's trained on, right? So it has an expiration, a cap, right? Anything that happened yesterday, it doesn't know unless you train it on it. Now, if you can add your own info to the LLM as you give it the answer, it can still form. It's like taking a test with open notes, right? Not a library. There's a library. Those are notes I want to take the test on. So
right, like the LLM knows how to process and think, and it understands the concepts. But then a RAG is like giving it notes that says, "Hey, the answers are probably all right here."
Yeah,
and yeah, I like that analogy. I like that analogy.
Exactly. So you can then create agents that can do things today using your own system with the same RESTful API, GraphQL, anything that you have, right? And people are enamored with let's build conversation or anything. I'm like, dude, you can replace a person. Like anything that you do. If a person clicks a button that calls an API and that does a series of action, any agent can do that. Why are we building more agents to do things like that? So that's why I'm seeing a lot of places turning on to this idea, but I don't think the industry as a whole is like, let's go all full-blown agentic.
Do you think it's just because people don't have... I have a theory, okay? I have a theory here. So I'm going to throw out my theory and then So AI, like people like you and I who've been in tech for years, we've known about AI since long before ChatGPT hit general availability. What I was blown away by when ChatGPT came out was not how good it worked or anything like that, or the LLM itself. What I was blown away by was how really smart, really creative people were using it, right? I was by the utilization of the technology. And I think oftentimes as engineers, we have to be creative like that, but we can't think about all of the possible use cases. So now what's happening so far is you have agents in the hands of of engineers, right? And maybe the engineers aren't being creative enough to think of all the possible use cases. And so now with, and ChatGPT or OpenAI rather, they've given agent access now to the public if you're paying $200 a month, which not every artist or every starving artist can afford $200 a month. So it's really not yet in the hands of everybody. So I think maybe this is my take, but I want to hear yours. So I think maybe we don't have the wide access to these to build agents. It's mostly in the hands of engineers. And if we can broaden that, I think we would see more interesting uses of agents. What do you think's holding us back?
You're not wrong. So you talk about like the general public use of agent. Sure, the ChatGPT now offering agent, I think Cloud doing something with computers, right? You're seeing some of that sort of like taking shape, which is good. We're talking about all these big companies, these big startups that have high paid engineers. I think what I'm seeing is the continuity of the same problem is that you can change that but in it to the whole AI stuff yet, right? All of them are just really stuck in their ways. And then those that are AI forward, see, the thing is, what I love about agent is the fact that you can use API as tools, right? any engineers that understand that, that's like, I'm like, here, there's LLM. Sure, you can do reasoning, but then you don't need to build your APIs, dude. The same one that you have can still be reused in some ways. Maybe you need to change them in a way. So once ChatGPT brings agent to GA and brings the cost down, everybody can do it, right? Like the person down the street is like, I just want to. Any creative person can find ways to. It's like the App Store. Create the App Store and you sort of see apps that create like, wow, you'd never imagine how you can create. Like the ChatGPT has a, I don't know what they call the store, but they have all the GPTs.
Yeah,
Then,
you could install things or
you would see that start taking shape. Now, what I'm asking is, like on the business side, why aren't we doing that? Why are we having customer chat agent? All I'm seeing is like, oh, it's a chat, right?
right.
Like that could be behind the entire system, right? That could be behind the whole, it doesn't matter what you're doing. One thing I found out today, the one of the company that I saw that probably took this the furthest, and it's in alpha, is Twilio. Actually, as a matter of fact, I spoke to them yesterday, and I was speaking to the AI team, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Where Twilio but segment the data, the company that get all the customer stuff, and they're building a conversational agent that you can call in, and it's a voice agent. They answer the phone, it talks to you, looks at your data, create, and you can give it tools as APIs, right? And that's open to the public. That's like open to the public, like if you want to use the Alpha. And you can build your entire voice in customer service sort of like strategy on the back of that with just agent that does great conversational.
That's fantastic.
Right. And you can build a tool that allows you to create agentic for customers, giving your e-commerce data. I was like, wow, yes. Not only that you understand how to use agent, you're giving people a way to even build their own tools in there. Now, programmatically, I'm like, how do we do authentication? There's some question that I have. How's that going to work? If you can figure this out, right? So you call a company right now, you're speaking to someone that sounds like Darie, completely agentic, understands every purchase you've made, can make suggestion, can talk to you, make change to your system, and no one's involved.
That's incredible.
That's the power of an agent.
You know, I'm dying to tell you some of the, well, let me ask you, do you have at Gusto, do you have a dedicated AI team like you mentioned that Twilio does? Yeah, Cypher, and we're building some really cool stuff with agents. I got to say, I can't really disclose, like I'm sure there's not everything that you're doing at Gusto you can disclose, but we have an AI team and it's very, there's some really cool things that we're working on that are actually of great use to our customers. So that chat-ish, but aren't like support related.
Yeah. And you can be, the chat could be a start, right? You can start saying, I want to do X, Y, Z, and then that's what kick it to process. Yes, there are AI teams at Gusto. Gusto has even an AI platform. But then when you reach Gusto scale, right, one AI team doesn't cut it. So teams themselves for the product, they do things. I think right now the AI platform is trying to bring the standard. So it's like, this is have an opinionated way of how we do AI at Gusto type of thing. And everybody can connect with it. And I believe that other companies are different. I've talked to some company, I can't remember who, where they purposely, intentionally don't have a standard. They were like, okay, fine, just go. They know there might be some duplication going on. They perfectly okay with this. They just maybe it's a race to who gets the thing better and whatever works for a team and not work for the other. I think you see some of that at Gusto too.
Of doing things too.
You end up getting in a place that
you let multiple people build the thing and then you see which one's better. You start testing them both and you say, hey, this one actually is better. And then that's the one that wins. But maybe you bring things from the other. It's a very cool concept.
Exactly. I've seen some companies do that. And the thing is with Gusto, when you're dealing with PHI and getting health data, HIPAA, it's really hard. So there's a very thorough process to bring new tech in, which can slow down sort of like you don't want to just use you kind of want the company and the legal involved in a lot of these things to not get ourselves in trouble, right? We should go company like Twilio, they can do more like a service. They can say that you give back to us. We're not holding any of your data. It's all your data. So you need to be compliant and we just need to have this level of compliance. I forget what they call it, so that your data can pass through us, but that's about it. So yes, the shorter version to your question is Gusto does have an AI platform, and there are other teams that are working on their own stuff doing it.
All right. So before we start, I have some closing questions. I want to ask you, how close do you think we are? How far away do you think we are from reaching artificial general intelligence, or AGI, where the machines are actually really thinking and not just simulated using math?
When I hear that, it's a very good question. We in speculative ground here. When I hear that,
Of course.
depending on who you ask, if you ask Sam Altman, it's like 2026. Like we're over there.
Oh, he says they figured it out already.
I didn't hear that.
He said that in January. He's like, "Oh, we got AGI figured out. We know how to do it."
Wow. Okay, that's good. And I think like Anthropic, all those guys are like 2027. Some researchers have a much bigger timeline. Here's what I'll say. My first issue is how do you let's agree on the definition of AGI, right? What is it? Truly purely computer that reasons? Is it like something that can do a lot of tasks in a seeming fashion, like can connect the dots? Depending on how you, it's what I call like the definitional ambiguity. It's like I don't know if that tracks, but there's so many people that think it's something different. What I can tell you is I don't know exactly when we get there. I think we're getting closer to super agent. I think we're getting closer to something. You said it yourself earlier. You said it. It seems like I'm talking to a human. It seems like I think intelligent. And then the trove and trove of data that is cheaper and cheaper to run. And if you have computers, if you have some agent that can really connect so many different pieces, it looks like we're inching closer, right? I think we're going to have some if you think of AGI versus narrow AI, I think we'll have some extremely good narrow AI thinking agents that, or like maybe, I don't know, I'm cunning the term super agent that can do things in a way that makes it feel like we're close, right?
I want Jarvis, man. I want Jarvis. Okay.
You can have something that feels like Jarvis today, right? I've thought about like, do I put a microphone all over my house with speakers? I already have them. How do I connect them into, I can just talk to it seamlessly and it can answer and sees what I'm doing, right? Maybe what I need now are cameras. And I can show it, hey, look at this. How do I continue doing that thing over here? You can get close to something that feels like it. Now, is that AGI? Definitely not. When do you think we get to ASI, artificial super intelligence, which is even more speculative? As we get closer, quantum computing becomes a thing that's generally available. I think the more computing power we have, the easier we can process things, the more things we can connect, then the closer you get to it still, right? So there's a bunch of advancement happening. I guess the answer is, I don't know. I don't know if it's within the next 10 years or 20 years. What I do know is we're getting inching so much closer to the point where the thing that we build might be sort of almost indistinguishable from what we'll consider AGI.
All right. So we're running low on time here. I've got to wrap up, but I've got 5 more questions for you. So I want to answer them in kind of rapid, I love letting you go off and just, like ideate, but for these, I want to try and give her short, concise answers as best as you can, because there are kind of, some of them are more thought questions, but you and I both share passion for climate. What do you think are some of the most promising applications of AI in big global challenges like climate change and poverty?
This is good. I think climate change AI is one of those things that use a bunch of data from ESG reporting using some pretty cool idea. I think that improve agriculture, where drones are being used to sort of put things to help crops and stuff like that. Now, drones can get very cheap. So if you bring that to developing countries, that could be a great game changer. I think I've even seen scenarios where the drones are sort of watering the plants too. That too. It costs some money, but eventually the economy of scales would bring those costs down. The last thing that I saw is, I think of education. A lot of countries that are poor, personalized education is a big problem. AI can help solve that. AI can build a system that gets targeted to a kid's weaknesses and help them grow without having to pay a private tutor in their own language. Things that maybe today is not possible, that we can do that in whatever.
Did you see the research coming out of Nigeria on that? They actually did a study in Nigeria, and they gave some students got private tutors for a couple hours after school, and another group got AI tutors. And the gains that they made in 3 years with the private tutors, they made in 2 weeks with the AI tutors.
See, I didn't even know this. So I'm just like saying
Yeah,
that I see the application and I heard of this happening. So those are the thing that I'm seeing. That I think
amazing.
that helps a lot.
So, okay, from your experience at SyncTech, at Gusto, what are the challenges in the practical challenges of deploying AI systems at scale or in the real world?
And not even the deployment of AI system at scale that I think. So let's think. So part of it we mentioned, the depending what industry you're in, there is a lot of compliance. How do we make compliant? The LLM itself doesn't need to be HIPAA compliant or PSI compliant or any of this compliance. The infrastructure around it is what becomes a problem. And it's not like you can roll out your own. If you roll out your own, then there's the scaling your whole LLM model. Not a problem. So use OpenAI, but then they say, okay, fine, I won't save your data. But then there's always the possibility of breach. And then what happened? Like, oh my God, we accidentally saved the data. So that's one of the big challenge. The other big challenge I see, developers, enthusiasm, and getting them involved, right? That's the biggest blocker. I think if we had more people in all those companies sort of like hopping into the AI train, then we'll probably see much more advancement.
If you're for young people that are just getting into tech right now and or getting into the AI field, what are some critical skills that you think they should be working on?
No different than what we had for software engineering. What I would say is that the people that are going to take your AI is not going to take your job. The people that use it effectively will, right? So get on the train, get with it. Like, look, it's probably one of the most consequential changes happening in your lifetime right now. Between your eyes, probably hard to see because you're in it. But just like the internet, just like printing press, this is something that changes things yet again, right? So get with it, understand it, take some classes, take some tutoring online to understand how to, whatever industry you're in, using the right AI tools can make it better. So find whatever that is, or contact me. I'll help you.
Speaking of which, contact you. You'll help. What for SyncTech? What types of clients are you looking for? What types of clients do you take, and how should they get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with us is SyncTech.Dev. You can go on the site. You can reach out to us, schedule some time. You can talk to us. Hit me up on LinkedIn.
SyncTech?
Yes. .dev. Yes.
.dev.
.dev. I think synchronizedtechnology.com also point to the same. So if that's easier, technologies.com. And Zach Greathouse, like our marketing guy, hit them up. You will reach us. What kind of companies we take in? For software dev, we take on well-funded startups, right? We book a business at least on average 200K. Below that, we most likely won't consider you. We want people that don't care about paying money. For AI consulting, we're building a product right now similar to what we're talking about here, that you can chat on the site that tells you if you're in XY industry, those are the tools that we think you can use, right? We're building a 21 question. You can get 21 question until you have to talk to one of us, right? So that's going to be fun. I wanted to get that ready before I talk to you today to like, hey, just go on the site and try it. It's not, but we'll have that ready soon.
But it's coming soon. This is published. Maybe it'll be out. So check the comments below.
Check the comments.
All right. I've got one last question for you. What can you tell me about Syntax Summit?
Oh, Syntax Summit. Syntax Summit is, that's good. That's yesterday new. I don't know how you get this information so fast.
I got the information yesterday.
It's a place for, okay. So there's a couple of things I'll tell you. It's a place for developers to come and learn from each other. There's going to be some fireside chat with some of the experts in the industry that talk all things. One thing I'm seeing going from Denver to SF to Texas and South Florida, there's no good AI meetup. This is not going to be an AI meetup, but we're going to have a very good AI focus. I get asked this all the time. What do you go to talk to AI expert? I'm like, I don't know. We're going to build it. That's going to be one of those things. So it goes from presentation sometimes to fireside chat with an expert and then a mini workshop. So we'll facilitate and we'll see what the audience tells us so we can sort of address accordingly.
Love it. Darie, I cannot thank you enough for being my very first guest. It was a very intentional honor given to you and all the amazing things that you do for tech, for your family, for the community, for the world. You truly are a top tech titan. And I'm so thrilled to call you a friend and to have you on the show. So thank you again, Darie. And, if we had a studio audience, they'd be cheering for you right now. But you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Todd. It was great talking to you. Being the first was an honoree, and I'm hoping to be back on this podcast because there's going to be a lot more to talk about. I have even more things coming that has not been disclosed yet.
I can't wait to see it. Thanks so much, Darie. Appreciate it.